Okay, so let's look at this demo code. I think it's this one. Oops. This is C out. Okay, let's look at this code first. Let me make this bigger so you can see it better. So if I compile this program and run it, it asks me to enter some inputs because of this, and because there is a new line, our prompt comes here. But as I explained in the previous slide, if I remove this \n, if I compile it, okay. So now user's inputs appears next to this cout. So that's the difference. This one. So it's usually better not to put new line here because this is more better interface, provide better interface to the users. And if I enter some input, let's input the doobie do to you. So let's say my input is this one. And this program reads my input here using cin and stores my input to A, and it prints A with this end of the input. So this is the output. So it reads do, stores in A, and prints here. End of the output is this one. So this is expected. I said that cin reads the input data until it meets the white space, all the new lines, because there's a white space here, it stops read the inputs here. So if so now let's A, B, okay. Read the input data using two variables here. So see the difference. Do we do 2 again? Now, as you can see here, output is do B here. Do B. Previously was do. Now we redid the B because of this one. But note that there is no space between do B, even though the actual my input consists of space between this one. Cin ignore this space. So you must be aware of this. So if you want to put the space like the original input data, you have to put explicitly by yourself like this. So if you now, oops, sorry, let me execute. Okay. What is this? Okay, that's strange. Now let me enter this to be the 2. Now there is a space because we explicitly put the space here. So be careful about this. Let's go back to the slides. So how can we solve this? How can we store the space? One way to solve this problem is to read one character of input at each time using get functions. And with get functions, you can store space as well as a new line into this given variable. So this is how you use a get function. You put cin dot and call the get functions and pass the variable here. And then it reads the one character from input and store the character into this variable. So if you enter, so if program is this one, if you enter A, B, C, D, it reads A stored in C1 and it reads B to store C2 and reads C and store this one and D stores here, and then if you print it, C1, C2, C3, C4, it outputs this way. Okay, let's look at the get functions with the demo code. So I should have a get one here. Okay. So this is the program source code. We've just looked at it. So let me compile this program. Plus get one. Maybe I don't need this one. This is larger. So if I run this program, it prompts here. This statement stops here, and to ready to read my input. So if I enter A, B, C, D, and if I press enter here, A, B, C. So it prints A, B, C. Even though I input A, B, C, D, it prints A, B, C because I only print this up to C3, not C4. So as I explained earlier, that A stores here, B stores here, C stores here, D stores here, and then it outputs here. So this is expected result. Now let's input this way: A space B C D. Note the difference. There is a space here. If I enter this input, as you can see here, output is A. Can you see the space here? Because C2 stores the space here, and C3 stores B here. So unlike the cint, using the extraction operator, which cannot store the space, using the get functions, we can store the space like this. Okay, and so that's the difference between the get function and the extraction operator. So let's look at the next example, which is this one. So the get functions read one character each time. So how can you read the whole input using the get functions? The answer is you have to iterate. You have to use a loop to iterate all the inputs here. So let me compile these programs. And I run this program. So it enters a line, it prints this outputs in here. And if I enter something, hello, CPE class, as I said, that get functions only read one character, but if I enter here, this program prints this one because of these iterations, this loop. So it reads the one character and prints to the console and checks whether the symbol is new line. So because E, the next input is E, because E is not new line, it iterates again. L, because L is not new line, it iterates again. and even space is not new line, and you print space and iterate again, and then at the end of this input string, there is a U line here. So when this read this U line, it prints the new line here, and then because of symbol is new lines, this expression evaluates to false, so breaks out to this loop, and then prints this one, which is this. So using this loop and checking new line and the get function, you can read the whole input string, including new line and the space. That's something that you cannot do with scene and extraction operator. Okay, hope you understand this one. Let's go back to the slides. We also have a second method to solve the previous white space and new line problem in cin and extraction operators. We can use getLine functions. Every input stream has these functions, getLine. The functions getLine has two arguments. The first argument is a C string variable, A, which is a C string variable, to receive the input. And the second is an integer that indicates the maximum number of characters that this function can read. Typically, the second argument is the size of the C string. Note that we learned that C string is a just array of base type character, like this one. So we put the size of the array as the second argument, like in this example. So with this program, we do not need the while loop. If we call these functions, and if we enter this do be do to you input data, it reads this whole string, including the white space and new line, as you can see here. So this is the output of this program. A consists of this. So do you think this is enough? Because in the previous example, there was a problem because we used the cin, because we used cin doc name like this one instead of this one. So we had the problems of space here. If doc name contains space, we were not able to save the space into this doc name variable. But as we just saw, that getLine function also can read and store the space. So will this solve the problem? So recall the previous example. If user puts the doc name as this one, the cin only reads this part and save into this doc name because it reads until the space, until meets the space. So doc name, as we saw in the previous example, doc name is Mr. Dot for this one. But we saw that with a getLine, we can read the space as well. So this one, doc name should be equal to this one, because this function can read and store the space. Oops. Do you think this solves the problems? Yes? No? Okay, so let's see the actual output of this program. So how many years of dog? Let's put 5. Oops, what happened here? So let me compile this program again, run it. So this program asks me to enter age of the dog. And after it reads the age of the dog, and then this program should ask me to enter the dog name here because of the CR, and then it reads the dog name using this statement. So here, because of this, it asks me to enter the dog age here. Oops, again. It does not ask me the dog name. It does not print this string, which is not expected. And if you look at the output of the program, which is here, here age is approximately equivalent to 35 years old human. So this is the output of this part. So because we entered 5 times 7, which is 35, so age is correctly calculated and print as output of the program. But as you can see here, there is no dog name here. Dog name should be print here and then apostrophe S here. But there's no dog name here because we did not enter the dog name. And because the program did not ask me to enter the dog name here. Why this is happening? This is very strange. Why is such strange things happening here? Okay, that's because let me run this program again. If I enter this 5 and press enter button, here Cin input is actually 5 and uline. This is my input. So this is my input here. Because I press enter, there's a new line here. But problem is that Cin reads the input data until it meets white space or the new line. So again, so Cin, this extraction operator, reads the input data until it meets white space or this new line. And because it reads 5, and because it meets the new line, it stops read the user's input here. But so after these statements, actual age is stores to 5, and my input, the user's input, remains this one. So 5 is removed because it read out using these Cin statements, but Cin does not read out this one. So my input, the user's input at this point, at this line is uline. So when we call these functions, so can you see here what is your dog name is? This string actually print out, but when program goes to this line, it reads this new line because new line is entered here. So dog name is actually so because there is a uline remains in user input data, this one did not ask me to enter the input. The program did not start here because it missed the new line. So how can we solve this problem? Let me delete this one to make program clean. So one possible way to solve this problem is you need to remove this uline from the console input data. So if I call uline function here, which is defined here, it iterates over the user's input because of this get functions read 1 characters from the user's input, and then it iterates until it meets the user's input is not new line. So by calling these functions, these get functions reads out uline from the user's input, which means it removes the new lines from the user's input. So if I call these functions before calling this get line, this remaining uline characters in user input, which is some kind of garbage, will be removed in these functions, and get line function should be work fine because of new line character is removed. So let's add these functions and compile this program. Okay, and run it. Now it asked me to enter the doc, like previous example. Now, as you can see here, it asked me to enter the doc name. That's because new line is removed by calling these new line functions. So if I enter the doc name is CPE, so now it's printing the doc name correctly. And it even solved the space problem. So doc name is fine. Let's say, what was the program's inputs here? It was Mr. Let's make this one. There is a space here. There was a problem in scene because scene did not read out this space, but because now we are using getLine, if we input this, as you can see here, these getLine functions read the space correctly and stored into this variable as well. So these getLine functions also reads the user input until it meets the new line, but this function does not store new line into this variable. Not that, but it reads and stores the space from the user input. And when you combine using getLine and cin, and because cin does not read out the new line, you have to explicitly remove new line from the user's input by calling new line functions like this one. Because getLine reads until it meets the new line, if we do not remove the new line character here, if the programs goes to this line, and if we call getLine because new line exists in previous user's input, it does not read the user's input correctly. So you must be careful about this one, this new line stuff. So let's go back to the slides. Hope you understand this part. Okay, we saw getLine. Okay, so we saw this problem of the new lines when you combine using cin and getLine. Okay, so that's it for these sessions. Let's talk about the file I/O in the following sessions.